Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we're going to be talking about the new moon solar eclipse in the third decan of Virgo. Hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon out there. We're going to be going on a journey with astrology this afternoon. We're going to be kind of breaking down all the bits and pieces of this new moon solar eclipse. We're going to be talking about kind of the astrology leading up to the eclipse and some of the astrology that's coming in the week or so after the eclipse, and kind of help you get centered through all this. I don't know, these challenging times that we're going through. So hope that you're doing well out there. Please leave me a comment in the chat. Let me know that you're here. It would be lovely to see you. Let me know where you're stopping in from. It is always wonderful to see all my beautiful friends stopping in. A couple announcements before we get started here today. It is enrollment season. So go over to spencermichaud.com. This is a great time to sign up for a reading if you want to kind of start to make a plan for the rest of the year or for your year ahead in 2026. All sorts of offerings. You can find me at the Book Now button to schedule a reading. I also have some classes coming up that I'm super excited about. I have my Decan Walk starting on October the 6th. So Monday, October the 6th, we are going to start on our year-long journey of examining our shared stories through the language of the decans and astrology. Really what we're doing is we're creating community. We're sharing our experiences and then matching that up with the astrology of our charts. And we're seeing how these similar transits are moving through multiple lives, which I think is really a beautiful way to learn astrology. It's very experiential. We're creating community as we go along. We're supporting one another on these journeys. We're breaking it down through the language of mythology, decans, tarot. It's just really an awesome experience, and I'm so grateful for the group that has been coming the last 2 years. We've done it 2 years. And I also wanted to mention that I'm having an open house tomorrow as I'm recording this on Saturday, the 13th of September at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of go through, we're going to just kind of have a little bit of a class. We're going to just open it up to anybody who wants to stop by. It's free. It's a preview. We're going to be breaking down some of the astrology of the moment. It's a Mercury Cazimi, so we'll talk about that. Well, anybody who wants to come, you can come and share your chart. We can start talking about your chart through the language of the decans. It's a great way to start getting familiar with this type of material and with some of the people that might be participating. As a little sweetener for the deal, everyone that attends will get a code for a free decan webinar. Part of the Decan Walk is being able to receive 12 decan webinars. Each of them are 3 to 4 hours long that go into depth, like to granular detail on how to interpret the decans and your astrological chart in much more specificity than you might otherwise. So you will get a free code for a decan webinar, a $45 value. And yeah, and it'd be just nice to hang out. This is a great opportunity just to see some old friends. Even if you're kind of on the fence about all this, just come and stop by. It would be nice to get to see some of your faces. So you can find the link for that in the description of this video and on my website, spencermichaud.com. If you go to the Book Now button, low stakes. You know, if it's you can't afford to do the whole year or whatever, I would just love to see you. It'd be nice to see you all stop in. So I hope that you'll join me for that. Tomorrow, Saturday, the 13th of September, free open house, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Hope that you can be there. I also have another class starting very shortly. We're going to be opening up our Lord of the Rings book club for the start of the Return of the King. So we're going to be starting that on September the 22nd, which is also a Monday. So I would love it if you'd be able to hop on and read the Return of the King with us. We've had an awesome group that's been going down a journey with The Hobbit, the Fellowship of the Ring. We just finished the Two Towers, and now we're going to be starting Return of the King and maybe preparing to do the Silmarillion in the weeks and months ahead as well. So if you want to hop in, if you're a Tolkien fan, if you just want to inhabit Middle Earth, we've got a really great little group that's going And we're just nerding out on doing both astrology and doing Tolkien. So we're really getting into depth with the lore of Tolkien. We're sort of matching that up with some astrological themes as well, which makes it a really unique group. So I hope that you can join me for that as well. Also, my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, has a super moon box set sale going on right now in celebration of this eclipse. We are going to be sharing all of this beautiful like package with moon and Taurus stuff. It's all this, it's soap, it's oils, it's herbs, a salt blend, a candle. It's all elected with a beautiful exalted moon in Taurus. And that's going to be, I believe it's 25% off right now. Check that out on Etsy. She makes great stuff. And it's a great way to kind of, I don't know, calm yourself during the eclipse season. Eclipse season can be rough. It can be a lot of transitions, a lot of challenges. And this material really like helps to settle you down and just get in touch with the earth and ground you a little bit. So go check her out on Etsy. Also, I have a newsletter that you can sign up for if you want to get updates on everything. If you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get a 10% discount on any service that I offer. Send me an email too. If you've signed up in the past and you haven't gotten that discount code, send me an email because there's been some things going back and forth with my email provider, email list provider, and I'm looking into some things. There's been some changes with the services they provide. So figuring those things out in the middle of eclipse period is always a little bit fun. But yeah, it's a great way to stay in touch. It's a great way to know when we're going live, when we're offering new classes, discount codes, etc. So please sign up for that. And then finally, if you want to support the work that I'm doing here today, you can purchase a super chat while I'm live here on YouTube, or you can become a patron at buymeacoffee.com. That's a great way to support the channel. It helps me keep the lights on here. It helps me to get all the materials that I need to do these broadcasts. It helps me to afford all the subscription services for the tools that I use to make this hopefully a high quality show each week. So thank you so much for your support with that. All right, my friends, those are our announcements. Let me know if you have any questions about any of the fall offerings, Deck and Walk, the open house, etc. I'm just going to welcome some of our friends in here. We've got some nice comments already coming in. Let's see who is here. Rachel's here. What's up? Rachel says, good evening, Spencer from Ireland, the time of year with the most beautiful light in the north. Lovely to join you after a few months of being too occupied to get here live. Well, Rachel, nice to see you, friend. Hope you're doing well over there in Ireland and everything's going well your way, my friend. It's nice to see you back in the chat. Javiera is stopping in, says, hola, hola. Hope everyone is having a fabulous today. I hope that you're having a fabulous day as well, Javiera. Thank you for joining us. I believe joining us from Ontario. Stephen is here, says, just here to say happy Friday. Can't stay for the live. Have a great weekend, Spencer. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for stopping in. Hope everything's going well your way over on the west coast of the United States. Rachel says, I would love to join you for the open house. You should join us, Rachel. It'd be nice to meet you. It'd be nice to chat with you. And I can't remember if we've talked before with another, you might have signed up for a webinar in the past, but my memory is escaping me right now. But if not, it would just be nice to talk to you again in person or via Zoom as close as we can get to that across the pond. All right. Dimphy is here. Says, hi, Spencer. Happy to be here again. Nice to see you, Dimphy. Hope you're doing well over there in the Netherlands. Steven says, this Kazemi is the best time to do something. I agree. We're going to be doing our Deck and Walk open house on Mercury Kazemi. So I think a beautiful time to communicate with one another, to learn a little bit about astrology and just spend some time together. All right. Nice. Javier says, I definitely want to join tomorrow. Awesome, Javier. Well, there's a link in the description of this chat here where you can click on it and just sign up for free, and it sends you a Zoom link. We're going to be meeting up over Zoom at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and it'd be lovely to have you there, friend. Yeah, we're going to be doing it over Zoom, probably hanging out for an hour or so, and just kind of looking at some charts, talking about how we do guided group study class and how we do Deck and Walk. And just, it's really a little mini webinar on the Decans as well. So another great opportunity to learn some good stuff and to meet some people. And I believe my daughter is going to be joining me from Sag Moon Magic. And I think Tanya might stop in from Third Coast Mojo. So I think we're just going to have a fun little casual experience on a Saturday afternoon. So yeah, I hope that you'll be able to join me for that, friends. Okay. Let's see what we got going on here for this new moon solar eclipse in Virgo 3. My goodness. So we're in the middle of eclipse season right now. It's been a little bit it's been rocky. There's been some things going on in the collective and in our personal lives that is probably a little bit destabilizing. But these are always kind of faded periods of time. I know that some periods feel a little bit more intense than others, and when we're going through the in-between phases from one eclipse to another, eclipses always happen in pairs and sometimes in threes. So we have this transition period, which my astrologer, one of my astrologer gurus, I guess, Austin Coppock likes to call the Bardo period, the in-between period. So I think that one of the experiences that we're having is like, it's a kind of a shakeup. It's a little bit of a chaotic moment where we're trying to figure out what the next chapter in our lives narrative is going to be, collectively and personally. So we just had a full moon lunar eclipse in the second decan of Pisces, one that was associated with wish making, but also the potential to overestimate our abilities to find satisfaction in life. And we may have had to surrender to a process that we didn't necessarily plan out. Maybe there were some things that came to us that we didn't plan, but we have to make adjustments to, and we sort of have to come into alignment with the divine plan on some level. So as we work into this new moon solar eclipse phase in Virgo, we may be starting a process of letting go that's going to help us to complete a physical process, a material process. I'll talk about all the significations associated with Virgo 3 as we go along here. We've also got this eclipse is hosted by Mercury in Libra, which has a mutual reception with Venus, and I'll talk about what that means. But this Venus in Libra is going to be hosting this eclipse, and it's in a decan that's associated with some feelings of anger, right? Of seeing things that aren't fair in the world, and maybe even a desire for retribution or something of that nature. So we'll talk about some of those themes as well. All right, just checking back with our chat friends here. Let's see. Rachel says, I'll be home tomorrow, and the open house is a lovely surprise in my diary. I've indeed joined you before. I thought you had, Rachel. I thought we had met on a previous webinar, but it has been a while. I think you were in one of the decan webinars, if I'm not mistaken. But it'd be great to see you again, friend. That would be great. Javier says, sounds like fun. I'll do my very best. Very cool. I would love to have you there, Javier, and just to put a face with all the wonderful comments that you've been bringing each week. Ani is here, says, hey, Spencer and friends, so much eclipse portal nodal fuckery. Minor inconveniences, but super annoying. Hope everyone is faring well. I agree. There's been some challenges, going around with, in our personal lives, in the collective. We've got a lot of big emotions coming up. We've got some events in the news that have been pretty destabilizing, and I think that this is an opportunity maybe to catch our breath before the next chapter starts, for sure. Ani says, I missed the announcement for the open house, so I'll catch up later. Yeah, we're having a Decan Walk open house tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern if you'd like to join us. It's free. Everybody that signs up gets a code for a free Decan webinar, so it's another opportunity just to check out some of the webinars. It's like a 3 or 4 hour webinar on each of the signs. So maybe pick your favorite sign and get a free webinar. Even if you just sign up and you want to get the webinar and you can't make it, that's okay too. But it would be lovely to see all of you and kind of just put some faces with the names that we see in the chat. I think that would be really fun. All right. So let's start kind of breaking down some of the details with this. So we have this new moon solar eclipse in Virgo, 29 degrees Virgo, on the 21st of September. Now, a couple things that I want to outline before we even get to the eclipse. I want to make you aware that as we are recording this, we're recording this on September the 12th, we're still going to be moving into a period of time where we're going to be going through a Mars benefic enclosure. So Mars is going to be in an area where it is going, I'll add this to the stage. Let's see if we can start kind of taking a look at this. So here's the benefic enclosure. Well, this is the eclipse, but what a benefic enclosure basically means is that we're going to have Mars here is going to be enclosed on one side from the rays of Venus and on the other from the rays of Jupiter. Now, it doesn't show that in this chart of the eclipse, but I thought that that was an interesting way to lead up to the eclipse, because there might be something challenging that we're going through, but there could be some protection around something that is normally very difficult. I have seen benefic enclosures of really ill-dignified, malefic planets in popular culture, where it seems like a public figure gets away with things often that would normally be beholden to the law or beholden to some kind of retribution from society, but it feels like they kind of get away with stuff. Sometimes it can be exalting a person that society tends to feel could be not necessarily a good person, maybe someone who spreads hate or talks about things in a way that makes others feel less than or smaller. And sometimes we see with benefic enclosures of a malefic, those types of voices being kind of exalted in a strange way. So these are the things that we're going to be seeing moving up to this eclipse energy. Now, it ends when Venus moves into Virgo on the 19th of September. So we're going to have this period leading up with this almost this protected Mars in its exile for a period of time. And that's also going to lead us up to a grand air trine of Mercury. So Mercury, Uranus, and Pluto are going to be going through a grand air trine on the 19th, a couple days before this eclipse. So we talked about this in the astrology of September at length. We talked about it a little bit in the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces, but really the grand air trine is going to be sort of when Mercury is moving into Libra, in that decan associated with righteous indignation, with wanting retribution for a crime, maybe with trying to identify and ask questions on what is fair and what isn't within the world. We may be seeing people getting aroused towards wanting to do things like protest, wanting to have retribution for a crime that was committed, something of that nature. And it's going to be a very, it's going to be very public and very like collective, I guess you could say, specifically because Uranus and Pluto are involved. So I've been advising people to kind of like process all of the different things that are coming through. But we have to be cautious and careful, because these grand air trines are going to lead up to a Mars-Pluto square from Scorpio to Aquarius. So we're going to talk about that as we get further on into this broadcast today. But that's one where we just have to be very careful about violence and things of that nature. We've been dealing with violence in the collective in various forms this past week, and we're heading into a period of time where the conditions for that becoming even more out of hand could be ripe with Mars squaring Pluto. So we'll try to navigate that as gracefully as we can. Let's see. Ani says, I want to come. Oh, that's good. I want to come to the open house. Good. I hope to see you there, Ani. It will be lovely to see you. Luri is here, says, I recently lost my mother, and this eclipse in Pisces fell in my second house, right on my Pisces moon. Oh, Luri, I'm so sorry. Yeah, definitely condolences for your loss there, Luri. That's always really challenging when we lose someone that is special and important to us. And you know, I lost my mother a few years ago, and I know it's a really destabilizing experience. So just wishing you, you know, healing and things of that nature. Take your time with it. It's going to be a while, you know, to kind of start processing all of that. But hopefully we can bring you a little bit of support today. Yeah, we're just sending you some love there, Luri. KP is joining us. What's up, KP? Says, hi, Spencer, and all joining from Cleveland from work, but listening intently. Nice to see you, Karen. Hope everything's going well for you down in Cleveland. My Green Bay Packers are coming to town next week, so we'll see how that all turns out. They're coming to play the Cleveland Browns. I don't know if you're a football fan, but I've been enjoying the first couple weeks of football season. But I digress. So coming off of the Mercury Grand Air Trine, we're going to be leading into our new moon solar eclipse in Virgo. Now, a couple of really important features of this new moon solar eclipse. So it is going to be when the sun and the moon come together in Virgo 3, the section of Virgo, because there are specific slices of the astrological wheel. You know, think of this as the pie that is between 10 or 20 degrees Virgo and 0 degrees Libra, I guess you could say, or 19 degrees and 59 minutes of Virgo, if you want to be more exact. But it is the last 10 degrees of the sign Virgo. And it has its own set of rulers. It has its own set of symbols, deities. It has a tarot card that's associated with that. We'll talk about all of that today. But one thing I wanted to mention is that this eclipse, let's bring this back to the screen here. Okay, this eclipse here is going to be co-present with the South Node and with Venus. So you can see here is Venus, newly ingressed into Virgo by the time the eclipse happens. And then the South Node, this little kind of upside down U here, or this little umbrella kind of thing here, is the South Node of the Moon. And this is a point, a mathematical point, where I believe the moon crosses over the ecliptic, and it is a point where it is very faded. Now, symbolically, the nodes can represent increase and decrease. There is also stories in Eastern philosophy and Eastern culture, Vedic astrology and things of that nature, where they talk about the nodes as a demon or a dragon. The North Node, Rahu, down here, okay, the little hoop here, is the head of the dragon that has consumed an elixir of immortality, but then had his head severed by another important deity in that pantheon, so that he doesn't die because he's already consumed that elixir of immortality, but then is kind of doomed or fated to be eternally hungry without satisfaction. So we just recently had an eclipse where we had the moon conjoining the North Node, which is also called Rahu, which represents a place of increase in Hellenistic astrology, but also a place of insatiable hunger. So we may have been very hungry for peace. We may have been very hungry for being able to surrender to a process, but we have to sometimes still work through the season that we're working through. I know with the North Node in Pisces, and now Saturn retrograding back into Pisces, what I've been hungering for on a lot of levels is some rest. And the issue that comes with Virgo season is there's actually just a lot of work to do during Virgo season. And you might not want to be doing that work right now in Virgo season with the nodes where they're at. You may be very much in desire of like, man, I just wish I could just be, rather than having to work through all these details type of things. But we have to kind of adjust to the time period that we're in and come into alignment with that time and with that, the Tao of that time, kind of come into alignment with the currents of our lives. So now with the sun and the moon in Virgo 3 conjoining the South Node, which is called Ketu, that's the body that has had the head severed from it. And this is where we are processing old things. And we're kind of like, I like to call it the eternal anus of the universe, where things are leaving our existence. We're processing, we're getting rid of things, we're clearing out the clutter. We are having to revisit some things from our past, but to let go of it. Now, it's very interesting that we have eclipses sometimes on these different nodal points. Sometimes we have a new moon on the North Node. Sometimes we have a new moon on the South Node. When the new moon's on the North Node, it's a beginning of a new desire, of an increase. When we have the new moon on, I hope I said the North Node there. I've just got them. When we have a new moon on the South Node, that's when we're initiating a point of decrease, where we're letting go of something, where we might be revisiting something from the past to start to maybe dismantle it, process it, let it go, clear the decks, so that we can free ourselves up for a new chapter that wants to be begun moving forward. We often fear letting go in Western civilization because we have this philosophy of exponential and unlimited growth, which is not in alignment with nature or the Tao. The Tao talks about periods of increase and decrease. When we study nature, we see times where things are growing, when we've planted seeds, and we see also times when things decay and when we need to let go of things and return them to the earth so that we can create fertility for the new cycle. If we continually try to grow things, we're not taking care of the land that we need to keep planting. We're exhausting the land. We're exhausting ourselves when we try to grow exponentially into infinity without taking periods of rest or letting things go. And that's when things can become toxic. That's when what we're growing can cease to become nutritious. And that is not just true of our food systems and industrialized agriculture. It is true of some of the projects and the relationships and the jobs that we have in our life. If we keep just trying to expand and grow, etc., eventually the things that we produce in that state, they just lack any sort of nutrition. They're hollow. They don't feed us. They don't nurture us. So by letting go, by returning something, by initiating an important process of letting go, what you are doing is you are facilitating the nutrients that you need for future growth. Now, that is a very Western way of describing that, okay? Because we still in our minds, as we go through this process, we still are like, well, we got to let go, but it's for future growth, right? But it's for future getting stuff, right? Maybe, yes. It's a way of rationalizing it. In other civilizations, sometimes the goal is not to futurely grow and to release so we can get something in the future. It may be so that we release our attachment to wanting those things, release our attachment to these bodies, release our attachment to our desires. And in that case, that brings us freedom. So the South Node is, I think, not just about letting go or returning something to the earth. It's about how do we initiate a process of freedom, but through release. And that's very powerful, and that can be very valuable. So I think that this is a powerful eclipse for ending a material process that will help us to let go, either for future growth, or for future freedom. And with Venus here too, this is a place where Venus is not necessarily at its best. It's in its fall in Virgo, in a place where we're trying to bring things together with Venus, but this sign, this temple, is very skilled at separating things out into categories, into analyzing things' flaws. So it may be very difficult sometimes to bring things or people together when we have Venus and Virgo transits. This is part of the dialogue that we're experiencing nationally. And in my part of the woods here is, the discussions that either we're sought to bring people together, or that we're trying to divide people. And it's really interesting to see how it all kind of shakes out. So I'm going to check in with the chat here, and then we'll keep breaking this down. Let's see. KP says, Karen says, yes, I'm a long-suffering Browns fan. I hear you. And as a fan of certain franchises like the Milwaukee Bucks and the Milwaukee Brewers, who had some really rough years, I can relate to that. As a Green Bay Packer fan, I've been really spoiled for the course of my life. We've had some pretty good years over the course of the last 30 to 40 years, and this year is looking pretty special. So I'm excited, but I totally understand the long-suffering fan type of experience. And sometimes we're at the top of the wheel of fortune, and sometimes we aren't. And I think I've learned more about grace through being a fan of bad sports teams sometimes than I have about being a fan of a good one. I've really been able to come together with people with our shared suffering with certain teams. So I feel you, but I just love the spectacle of it and some of the poetics of just sports in general. So yeah. Javier says, funny, this connection to the dragon in the year of the snake. I always see the snake as the dragon's little sidekick, right? Yeah, I like that, Javier. Funny, the game Snake was not a dragon. There you go. Absolutely. Rachel says, I feel like there's been a ton of work and a ton of emotional work to do all at the same time. I've been managing with bursts of the more practical tasks and days when it seems like I'm mostly processing deeper things. Yeah, you and me both, Rachel. There's been a lot of detailed work, but also uncovering just some really emotional things and having to work through deep feelings that some of those details have been revealing. I think that that's sort of the balance that we're trying to strike with the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo is we have to deal with reality, but we also have to deal with the emotions and the feelings that that reality brings up in us, and then aspire potentially towards something that we can't always necessarily see physically. That this is the balancing point. Virgo is very concerned with what we can see. Pisces often talks about what we can't see and the faith that we need to see us through when we can't necessarily see the physical manifestation of it, when we're dealing with like something like a platonic form or an idealized version of something. Javier says, I agree with you, Rachel. Kind of like the concept you can't learn new material if your cup is already full. Absolutely. That's a really great anecdote from some various spiritual traditions where, you know, the guru says, hey, you know, you're not going to be able to learn anything new until you empty that cup out first. And that's sort of what the South Node helps us to do. I think we need to empty our cups every once in a while. It isn't something that's always really encouraged in a society that is, I would say, pretty toxic with the way that it refuses to acknowledge periods of the ground laying fallow, periods of letting go, thinks that any time that we are not growing, we're failing. And we have this delusion, I think, of perpetual progress, etc., as well. And as astrologers, we understand that life doesn't always progress in a linear fashion. It has cyclical relationships. Now, we can make arguments that that cycle could be in a spiral, or we're spiraling out to a different level of consciousness, but things come back around. I mean, I think that this cyclical understanding versus one of linear progress, I think, is really important towards understanding astrology. And you'll make a lot less mistakes if you start to see human beings as just part of that ever cycling process that sometimes is up, sometimes is down. That basic human nature has been pretty much the same for thousands and thousands of years. And hopefully we can just try to navigate it as gracefully and as kindly as possible. Javier says, the hermit wants to play alone. Yes, sometimes it does. That's part of the Virgo energy as well, because the hermit card is associated with Virgo. So sometimes we do need to be alone to hear the voice of the divine. There is some significations associated with oracles with Virgo. So like being able to hear the voice of spirit, I think, is important during these periods of time. Rachel says, I'm contemplating a program of study right now about it. Let me see. Let me move this first. It's been a long haul and I have no idea what comes next. I am just relieved to be near completion, excited to feel more spaciousness as September ends. Oh, I'm excited for that. Yeah, clearing out space in life is always kind of feels like a weight that's lifted from our shoulders. So I agree. Like sometimes endings can be celebrations, you know? Javier says, I'm always rooting for that underdog. Absolutely. And Karen, speaking of underdogs, she's laughing and says it builds character when we're fans of teams that aren't necessarily, you know, on top of the wheel of fortune at that period of time. And you know what? The contrast makes it that much sweeter. When you've experienced loss, when you've experienced the suffering and pain, not just in sports, but in our life, when we do have successes, when we do have someone showing us a kindness, it makes it that much more sweeter. I think that there's a lot of spiritual traditions where a lot of people are asking, well, why do we have to go through these periods of suffering? Why do we have to go through these periods of violence or these periods of discord? I think it provides a paradox. It provides a contrast so that we can appreciate some of those more positive manifestations. I really do believe in the philosophy of homeostasis, of balance, and of the universe continually, I think, attempting to self-correct into balance. And we see this throughout history, is when we see things go to extremes, oftentimes there is an equal and opposite force that starts to bring it back into centeredness. So it's not always easy. Sometimes it's very painful, and sometimes we have to kind of nudge things back into those centralized positions. But it's part of the great dance that we're experiencing. Rachel says, I'm grateful for my Piscean planets, Mercury in particular. I feel it supports a faith to somehow keep going in the face of some pretty discouraging realities. Absolutely. And this is a thing too, like as we step into cyclical understanding and we learn to surrender through our Piscean placements or through just understanding that surrender is a part of the whole. We also find the balancing point with our Virgo placements or through the ideals of Virgo, where we do get involved and we do reshape our reality through hard work, through organization, etc. That's what the beautiful thing about the zodiac is, being able to see that every part of our lived experience has a place within the whole, within the collective. Every experience can sort of be explained through a different slice of the astrological circle. And I'm just a huge believer in equilibrium. And, you know, I think when, I don't even know how to explain it any more in depth than that. I think that when we go to extremes, we're again planting the seed of something's opposite. And like we're seeing in the collective right now with a lot of this violence that we're experiencing in many different arenas, we're just planting seeds for opposite and strong reactions. When we express that violence and anger, what we're doing is we're planting a seed just for the cycle to keep perpetuating itself. I had a friend that was talking about some of the recent events and talked about the myth of the Hydra and Hercules' labors. And it talks about when you cut off one head, you know, violently, it sprouts 9 more in its place. And the only way that they were able to overcome that challenge was to cauterize the wound through holding it up to the sun, holding it up to the light, through awareness, through being able to understand what we were dealing with and to heal it, right? So being able to deal with some of the current events, I think is, I think it's through clarity, awareness, and trying to cauterize some of these wounds rather than trying to slice off all of their heads and seeing 9 more sprout in their place. Javier says, nobody likes tepid or stale water. Absolutely. You got to keep it flowing. Mother Teresa seems to have embodied this as well. Trust in spirit and service to others. Absolutely. Yeah, a balance, right? A balance between having faith, but acting on that faith, right? Yep. Spirit is strong. Javier says, yay, breaking of past cycles are coming up huge for me. Wonderful thing to do during eclipse season. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the sun and the moon in this decan of Virgo 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up just this little decan flashcard. This is sort of a teaching tool that I've been using not only in my decan walks, but throughout just a lot of the live streams here as well, where we're seeing all of these different significations with each 10-degree section. So again, this is between 20 degrees Virgo and 29 degrees and 59 minutes. I believe earlier in the broadcast, I may have misspoke and said 19 and 59 degrees. It's between 20 degrees and 29 and 59 minutes. And it is hosted by Mercury. So we have a Mercury-ruled sign, Virgo, and a Mercury-ruled face of that sign. So this is a very strong mercurial decan. It is associated with the tarot card, the 10 of Pentacles, where you see a figure maybe advanced in years that is kind of sitting around enjoying the wealth of a life well lived. Hopefully, he's surrounded by friends and family and cherished pets, maybe on the threshold of moving on to another experience, maybe the threshold of death. There's a lot of associations with this decan about passing on a legacy, about being able to understand how we can take the abundance that we've created through the summer season. Remember, Virgo is still a summer sign. This is the last sign of summer in the Northern Hemisphere. So we're taking everything that we've grown, everything that we've learned, and we're putting it into form in the first and second decans of Virgo. And here in the third decan, we're disseminating and passing that on to those who would benefit from it after we have left this mortal coil. There's also themes of order versus entropy in this decan. Order being the things that keep us together. Our atoms in our body are ordered to keep this form, this human form that we are experiencing. But as we learn, as we age, that form is slowly decaying. And we can take all sorts of steps to preserve it as long as possible, but eventually that form will decay and this body will become used up and we'll have to pass on to whatever the next stage of existence is. And these are some of the realities we have to come to terms with when we are dealing with Virgo 3. So Austin Coppock calls it the sarcophagus, because not only is this decan about passing something on into the next phase of existence, like burying something in the ground, but it is also about preserving things. So it's about preserving things and protecting it against entropy, and then also accelerating that entropy process and saying, you know what, I don't want to keep this ordered and together. I want to release this. I want to return this to the earth. So discarding our old forms, coming to terms with the corruptibility of matter. This is interesting. The corruptibility of matter is so, I think, an important theme for me with this. I have both of the malefic planets, Mars and Saturn, in this decan. I have Saturn at 21 Virgo and Mars at 28. And this is a decan that I've had some really tough lessons through. I was very much obsessed with health as a young person. I was very afraid of death. I think when we have malefics in a specific place, sometimes when we are really focused on one area of things, we can fear those things. I think Saturn can often represent things that we maybe fear before we start to understand it from a different perspective through wisdom. And I was obsessed with health, with like taking supplements and things like that, and preserving my form against entropy and decay. And there's been various times where I've had done things that have like, oh, that was silly, trying to preserve something against entropy and decay. Like the favorite story that you've probably heard a million times if you're a fan of this channel is there was a point where I was afraid that my hair was falling out, and I made this concoction from various oils, and turmeric was one of the main ingredients in it. And this is when Venus was hanging out in this decan, you know, Venus, glamour, beauty, etc. And I used it for like a day, and it was just so messy and disgusting. My hands turned like bright yellow. It was getting all over everything. And it was a lesson of like, this isn't worth it. This is not worth it to try to preserve something very superficial that is just a part of my physical form and not necessarily the essence that animates me. So understanding essence versus form is very important in this decan. I have some other tough lessons with this decan. With, you know, we have our friend here, Looney. Is that who we're? Let's see. I'm going back in the chat. Luri. Sorry, Luri. Luri just lost her mother, and I lost my mother a few years ago in 2022. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer and then had a mastectomy. And shortly after her surgery, she had a blood clot that traveled to her brain, and she had an aneurysm, and then was very, very disabled for a number of years. And I watched her her form decay. And there was really nothing that I could do in the moment to fix that. And eventually it claimed her. And that was a very tough lesson of understanding that there are certain situations that we have control over, and there are certain situations that we absolutely do not. And all of us are going to go through this, eventually, this letting go process. And it is very humbling to go through those experiences. So when we have the sun and moon in Virgo 3, we could be going through a humbling experience in regards to our physical forms, in regards to the physical forms around us, whether it's people, whether it's objects that we want to preserve, whether it's relationships, whether it's a metaphorical idea that needs to be let go of. All of those things can be subject to the process of order and entropy. Remember, entropy is that process where those atoms are scattering back into chaos, right? And eventually they come back together in a new form, and then they scatter again. We have those physics where they say, energy, atoms, matter is neither created nor destroyed. It just comes together into order, into form, and then it splits off into chaos again. So this is part of the lesson that we're going to be experiencing with this solar eclipse. So let's start taking a look at the host, Mercury. So here we have Mercury at 5 degrees of Libra in aversion to the eclipse. Okay, so it is in a blind spot to the eclipse. But what it does have is a mutual reception with Venus. Now, the concept of mutual reception means that these two planets are visiting each other's sign, each other's temple, each other's land that they are responsible for. So Mercury is visiting Venus's temple of Libra, and Venus is visiting Mercury's temple of Virgo. So even though they don't have a line of sight to one another, that's what it means when we have something in aversion. They're in a blind spot to one another. They can't necessarily help each other through the traditional means. Because there is this mutual reception, there may be some things behind the scenes that are helpful to one another. Venus may be helping to smooth out some of the processes of separating things out into categories, of finding flaws, but also finding value. Mercury may be asking some difficult questions about what is fair and what isn't, what constitutes justice, what constitutes fairness, what constitutes this concept of identifying imbalances so that we can start restoring them. Now, there is a spirit in this decan called the Uranus. So every daimon in the decans gives a little bit of a different flavor to the sign. Now, this is from a fragmentary Hellenistic text called the 36 Heirs of the Zodiac. It's very ancient. It's very mysterious. It's like 1 to 2 pages long, but it really has some interesting symbolism that can give us a little bit of a different vantage point, a different lens to look at parts of the sign through. Now, traditionally, we think about balance, about creating win-win situations, about judgment, and maybe even peace with Libra. But this first decan of Libra is actually pretty intense and can sometimes represent anger. And part of that is due to this daimon or spirit, the Uranus, because the first decan of a sign often can show us the lack of what we are trying to achieve in the journey through the sign. In the beginning of Virgo, sometimes we become aware of skills that we lack, that we need to go and work on. In the beginning of Libra, we can start to get an awareness of an imbalance, of where something is not fair out in our collective. And then we do the hard work of coming to an agreement, of a negotiation that will eventually bring us to that balance that we so desire. So because this eclipse is being hosted by Mercury in the first decan of Libra, we may become very aware of imbalances. We may become very aware of injustices out in our world. One of the things that I think is interesting as we're looking through some of the news of the week, We had two violent events that happened on the same day uh, related to gun violence. The way that a government exalted one of those figures and kind of ignored the other one, it doesn't necessarily seem very fair, even though there was a loss of life in both of those situations. So there's all sorts of kind of ways that we can see in our collective where we're saying, well, what is fair? Maybe we're feeling angry about whether there is an injustice within that. So I think that there's going to be a lot of conversations about how do we bring things back into equilibrium, into balance? How do we have conversations with one another rather than perpetuating the cycle of violence? There's been a lot of things in the news about how we talk to one another and the way that we put energy out into the world. And I think it's important to ask those questions about what are we perpetuating when we put our thoughts, feelings, and energy out into the world? Are we perpetuating hate? Are we perpetuating peace or love? Both of those things exist in the world. And again, the contrast between them sometimes can help us to appreciate some of the more positive experiences that we have. I don't have a great answer for it. I used to be a little bit more Pollyanna about the world and about human nature, but I'm kind of starting to understand that both of the light and the dark have a place in our psyches, in our experiences, and they are all part of a narrative that is constantly unfolding and informing one another. And I don't have all the answers to that. I choose to try to live my life spreading messages, hopefully of peace and of love and kindness. Does that mean that I'm immune to anger or immune to feeling the feelings that could lead to an expression of that anger? Absolutely not. There's things that make me upset all the time. Sometimes life is complicated, like we're trying to balance out those two feelings really intensely. And I think that we're going to be seeing that with this eclipse pretty significantly, trying to find balance and asking questions of what is just and what is not. We might have some very real righteous indignation. We can denounce violence while also not supporting the ideology of the person who was a victim of that violence. It's very there's a lot of gray area in life. Let's check in with our chat here. Let's see. Who we have stopping in? Javier says, funny, my mom's a Virgo sun and I'm a Virgo moon. We have been connecting a lot lately. Oh, that's good. Yeah, sometimes when we share stuff in our chart, we can find some sort of way to work through things with other people that maybe we had difficulty with in the past, but we start to understand them from a different perspective as we go through life. Javier says, I love this card. It tickles all the earth in my chart. I believe you're referring to the 10 of Pentacles, right? Wisdom Anyedor is here. How you doing? How you doing, friend? Says, yo, Spencer. How you doing, my friend? Nice to see you in the chat. Hopefully you're having a wonderful afternoon there. And thank you for joining us today. Javier says, speaking about endings, my landlord just sent me a document offering me funds to relocate. I love astrology so much. Oh, that's interesting. Then someone saying your landlord's paying you to leave. That's usually not how it all shakes out, but I hope that either it works out for you or you're able to stay if that's what you want to. I guess whatever the best outcome would be for you, I hope that it finds you. I probably want to take the apartment to expand the storefront I live behind. Yeah, sometimes that happens, right? Dimpy says, my natal Mars is at 618 Libra. I better stay indoors. Maybe. Yeah, sometimes when we have difficult planetary conjunctions coming up, we need to be a little bit more careful, but we do need to live our lives too. I think that if Mars is there at 6 degrees Libra, and Mercury is going to be hanging out on your Mars. It may be more about watching our communication styles, right? And watching our exchanges with others. It could be that we get very upset about something and start to maybe yell at someone that we didn't necessarily mean to pop off at or something like that. So it may be just more an ideological thing than just a physical one as well. Ani says, that's a bribe. Very eclipsy. Nodes are underhanded in trickery with Mercury. They must be breaking the contract or need your cooperation. Yeah, that's potentially true with Javier's situation. Javier says, I would love to move, but we're in a housing shortage in my area. That has been going around all around the world. So yes, I think that you have to figure out what the right situation is for you. Taking a temporary payout, but having to find a place that may be more expensive in the long term might not be right for you. So maybe you need to stand your ground in that regard. But it's important to kind of weigh both sides of it and then come to an informed decision. K-Wow is here. What's up? K-Wow says, I'm a little late, but hi. Nice to see you, K-Wow. Hope everything's going well with you, my friend, and welcome to the chat. Okay, so we've been talking about Mercury hosting this eclipse from 5 degrees of Libra in aversion to the eclipse, but in mutual reception with Venus. So a little bit of a secret behind, maybe here this is a good example, Javier, a behind the scenes deal, right? that could be facilitating the change. And Javier has been offered a buyout basically to move out of her apartment, but it could be this behind the scenes thing that maybe it's a good thing and maybe it's not. You know, since Venus is in its fall, it might not necessarily lead to the best situation or outcome. Yes, exactly. Ani says, it's an inconvenient bummer to be forced to leave even if they give you a small concession. There you go. You got to think of the long term, right? All right. Javier says, see, this is why I love astrology. Well, there you go. See, the mutual reception, but with a contractual agreement. This is another thing, Javier, to think about as this unfolds. Mercury is going to be heading into the second decan of Libra shortly after this. And the second decan of Libra is about oaths and contracts. So there may be some negotiations that go back and forth on your part with this. And that's one way this can unfold, but we're going to be seeing this in the collective as well. All right, friends. So just do me a favor for a minute. Let's take a little stretch break. Stretch our legs so that we can make it through the long haul here. Do me a huge favor. Please like this video if you're stopping by. If you're new, please subscribe. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It's always nice to see my new friends here. Where we usually go live every Friday. Sometimes we take a week off here and there, but not very often. We go live on Friday afternoons, usually about 1 or 2 o'clock, depending on the planetary hour at the time of year that we're doing it. And it's a nice place to be, I hope. Also, if you're brand new here, or if you just stopped in halfway through, we've got a wonderful Deck and Walk open house happening tomorrow. And this is going to be just a time to hang out, a time to kind of get a preview of what Deck and Walk is going to be like in the year ahead. This is a preview of a class that I give every year where we go on a journey over the course of an entire year together, where we're breaking down our charts together through the language of astrology, the decans and the tarot, fixed stars, etc. And we're seeing how these transits and placements play out in multiple lives and multiple charts, which I think is extremely valuable. This year, we're also going to be focusing on our specific Time Lords, which is a planet that is activated each year of the life based on which house is activated in your chart for that year. So you may have gone through the Deck and Walk previously and you had Mercury as a Time Lord, and that activated all sorts of different things in your chart. But now this year, it might be Venus that's activated, right? If we're going from Virgo to a Libra perfection year. These are all terms that we learn in Hellenistic astrology, and I'll explain all of those when we go through the Deck and Walk. But tomorrow, a free open house. Come hang out. We're going to talk about the astrology of the moment. Maybe we'll get to have some chat back and forth. We're going to be doing that on Zoom. So via Zoom, you'll get a Zoom link when you sign up for that. It's free to sign up. Once you sign up, you'll get a code for a free Decan webinar of your choice too. So if you like the style of teaching that I do with the Decans, I have a whole webinar series where I have a 3 to 4 hour webinar for each sign of the zodiac with mythology, tarot significations, talking about the Decanic rulers, how to incorporate it in the chart. So if you want to get a free one, a $45 value, you can sign up for this and you'll get a code that will be sent to you for the webinar of your choice. So I hope that you can join me. That's going to be tomorrow, Saturday, September 13th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Also, I have the guided group study Return of the King is going to be starting on September the 22nd. So if you've been like feeling like, oh, I missed out on the Lord of the Rings, and then that sounds pretty cool, we're opening that up, our little group. We've got a couple people. We don't have a huge group, but we have a really dedicated group of people that are really into Lord of the Rings. And we've been utilizing the language of astrology, tarot, to break down not only the characters in the story, but also the actors and the films and things of that nature. It's been really, really fun. And we're opening that up to hop on board for the Return of the King. That's going to be Mondays as well. And we are going to be kind of prepping for a dive into the Silmarillion, which is Tolkien's like really amazing mythological kind of system that he put into place into book form. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to start with the Return of the King. So it'd be awesome if you guys want to stop and hop in with that as well. Okay. Let's see. I'm just checking in with the chat here. Thank you so much, friends, for sticking with me. We've got a few more details to go over with the astrology. We're going to kind of talk about how this is going to unfold over the week after the eclipse. But I'm checking in with the chat, see how everybody's doing. Let's see. Give me 1 second. I got to get back to the place where I was at. Dimfy says, 5th house Libra perfection year started 3 weeks ago for me. So yeah, so Dimfy is going through a period where Libra is her perfected house for the year. It changes every year. You start at your ascendant, and every year you kind of click over, like you move the chart like a dial, okay? And the house that it comes to, like, I don't know, I know Dimfy is a Virgo, potentially. I don't remember. Is Dimfy, are you Cancer rising? Can't remember. Maybe Virgo rising. But Dimfy is starting a Venus perfection year. So what's going to happen is Dimfy is going to be tracking not only transits to her natal Venus, but transits of Venus in the sky to other planets in her chart. And that's going to give her a lot of information about what's going to be happening in her life, because that particular planet is kind of turned on for the year, right? Every planet is still active, but there's much more of a spotlight on that planet for Dimfy in the year ahead. Gemini rising, sorry, Dimfy. Sorry, Gemini rising, Virgo sun, Pisces moon. So Dimfy is a Gemini rising, which means that she just is going to be starting a 5th house perfection. 5th house, that's right. You said it in the comment. I should have known. So 5th house perfection with Gemini rising. Let's see. Javier says, I would love to join that group. Also, Javier, you should join. Come on board for the Return of the King. It's a lot of fun, Javier. We have a great time. The other thing, friends, if you are looking at the offerings, and you can find on my website a whole landing page for Decan Walk 25-26, and you're looking at that and you're like, oh, okay, it's a pretty big investment, but there are payment plans for all of this. Even if you want to extend it out into an entire year, I've done that for participants in the past. I just want to make sure that people are able to participate. So yeah, it would be great to have you hop in with the Lord of the Rings book club there, Javier. Javier says, do you go over perfection years in the Decan course? Yes, we do. So Decan Walk is a blanket term, I think, where we do focus on the Decans, but this is sort of like my flagship offering. And I think it's an astrology immersion course, and it's a community building exercise. So really what we're doing is we are we are speaking the language and gaining fluency from immersing ourselves in each other's charts for an entire year. It's one thing to meet and have someone look at your chart for like a day. Like when I do a reading, it's important, it's valuable. Please sign up for that. But it's a whole nother level when you can talk about your experiences in real time over the course of a longer cycle. And what we're doing is we are not only looking at our own charts through the cycle and the significance of the different symbolic language of the planets, etc. We're learning technique as we go along, and we're seeing it through the eyes of other lives as well, which I think is the most valuable part of it. And it's not just disconnected. Like I got a really nice testimonial from Laura, who's a participant, she stops in the chats as a really kind soul. And she talked about we are cheering each other on through these challenging life experiences. When you go through an entire year with someone, there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs, and we're going to see each other at each other's best. We're going to see each other at sometimes their worst. And we're creating this container, this hopefully safe space to just experience those things, connect them with the astrology, not only in our own lives, but with other people's lives, and work through it together as a group. It's just been so, enriching. Yeah, is a good word. Javier says that sounds like very rich in wisdom. It has really been a humbling experience for me as well, just getting to learn about other people's lives in such an intimate way. So yeah, we go over astrological technique. We talk about perfections. We talk about time lords. You will learn the fundamentals of Hellenistic astrology through doing a group like this, because we are going to be. I love showing my work. So someone could tell me a story. So what people will come and they will tell a story about what's going on in their life, and we'll have the chart up for the entire story, and we'll start pinpointing in their charts what possible connections that story is to the transits in their life and to what's going on in their chart natally over the long narrative of their life. So what we're doing is we're making that connection in real time while someone's telling their story and seeing it on the screen for an entire year together. When we meet for Kate says, is the live class occurring on a certain weekday? Yes, we meet the first and third Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern time of every month. So we're going to be meeting for 24 sessions twice a month. We're going to be kind of going through and sharing our stories with one another. We're going to be talking about the astrology of that moment, preparing you for astrology that's going to be coming up. That's a lot of what we talk about too, is say, hey, we got this eclipse coming up. How is this going to affect each of us individually, right? And man, it's just been really wonderful. Nice. Yes. Yeah, Kate, come to the open house tomorrow if you can. It would be lovely to meet you. And 3 p.m. tomorrow, we're having a free open house via Zoom where you can kind of come ask questions. There might be some Decan walkers that stop in that you can ask questions about their experience and things like that. Javier, each class goes between 90 minutes and 2 hours. And you can stay as long or as little as you want. There's recordings as well. So you can, if you miss a session, you can see the recording of what has gone on. There's a Discord group to be able to discuss things outside of the times that we meet. You get over 30 hours of webinar material to be able to work through as well with the Decan webinars. You get all the Decan webinars are included when you pay for the Decan walk. You get a workbook that you can work through. We have a workbook for the solar decans. And then we also have a workbook that we're going to be creating for your specific Time Lord for the year as well. There's Decan flashcards. It's really an awesome experience. Javier says, I better save these questions. Yeah, come tomorrow. Come check it out. Yeah, that'll be awesome, Javier. Okay, so thank you so much for humoring me with some of this. Let's talk a little bit about how this eclipse is going to unfold. So we've got this new moon solar eclipse. One thing that we didn't talk about yet is the new moon solar eclipse is going to be opposite Saturn. Now, Saturn is retrograded back into Pisces. And here we see Saturn, right? Saturn's hanging out in the final degrees of Pisces, and it's opposing this eclipse. So there is an opposition between, got rid of it. I got too perfectionistic about my arrow. So there we go. So the Saturn opposition. So our attempts to pass on a legacy, our attempts to let go of something may require some Saturnine coming to terms with the emotional realities of doing so. Sometimes when we have Saturn in Pisces, we have to come to terms with the wild swings of emotions that we experience as human beings, especially in the third decan of Pisces. That decan is associated with the Ten of Cups, which shows this kind of happy, idyllic family underneath a rainbow of cups. But what it's hiding is a Mars-ruled decan that talks a lot about sacrifice. There may need to be some sacrifices that come along with trying to pass on that legacy. When Saturn is in Pisces, we may come to the harsh reality that we have to give something up to surrender to the process, that we need to come to terms with the fact that we are going to have moments in our life where we have this exhilarating feeling and we have this despair, and we're going to kind of wobble between the two, and we're going to have to experience some of the harsher aspects of life in this decan. The spirit in Pisces 3, though, is called Elpis, and Elpis roughly translates to hope. So this is a decan that references Pandora's jar. Okay, I know we call it Pandora's box, but technically it was a jar that had a lid, and all of the ills that befall human beings, old age, death, war, violence, etc., were released from the jar, but underneath the lip of the lid, Elpis was still there. Like Prometheus, some versions of the story say that Prometheus slipped in hope to help humanity get through some of these challenges that Zeus had unleashed on them in punishment for stealing the fire of the gods. And that hope is really important. Like I don't know if this is true or not because I'm not another species, but we may be one of the only species that is aware of their own impending mortality. I don't know if a dolphin or a whale is aware of their own impending mortality. It is certainly possible. I don't want to make that assumption. But we are one of the species that is aware of our impending mortality. And that is important to acknowledge because it would be very easy to fall into despair, knowing that we have to leave this plane of existence eventually. And Elpis and hope helps us to have a remedy to the morose or the doom that we may be experiencing through that awareness and that clarity. So sometimes that Elpis and that hope is what keeps us going in life, even though we know that we're going to have to experience some suffering, that we're going to have to let go of some things, that we're going to have to go through periods of being on the top of the wheel or on the bottom of the wheel of fortune. And this decan in 36 Faces, Austin Coppock's book, is called The Cup of Blood. So sometimes there are things where we have to sacrifice something, and we have to be aware if we're becoming either a martyr or playing the role of martyr or savior and things of that nature as well. Okay, so important to understand that there might feel a little bit of a blockage at this new moon solar eclipse as well. We might be ready to let go of something, but there might be some detail that is holding it in check, that we have to come to terms with the emotional reality of doing that. Like, for example, Javier was talking about leaving an apartment and being potentially bribed to do so or offered a buyout. Well, maybe Javiera isn't ready emotionally to leave the space that she lives in. And to make that change or to let go of that material form would require some really tough emotional decisions around that. And you know, Javier, if you come to open house or whatever, we could take a look at your chart in detail and see how this eclipse may be affecting you, and kind of prepare you for that and see whether there might be a different unfolding with that. So it's something to keep in mind, that we have to come to terms with the emotional realities of letting go of the physical form. But I will remind you that essence is something that we can consider eternal in our spiritual viewpoint. The form, which is represented by the Virgo slice of the pie, is changing. It's ever changing, right? And we cannot hang on to form. This is one of the harsh realities of physical incarnation, is we can't stop the order and the entropy sometimes without great hardship or manifesting great evil. I think some of the most terrible things in the world have been perpetuated because someone was trying to keep something old, some old form, some old idea or ideal alive after its time was up. And we have to look at this in our own lives too. And we hang on to things so tightly that it just isn't giving us life or vitality anymore. All we're doing is perpetuating suffering by continuing to hold on to it. All right. Let's see. So a couple more things. Let's get rid of the... Now, as we see this unfold over time, we're going to see, I'm going to bring the secondary chart outside here. And this chart on the outside shows us where the moon is going to be when it makes its escape from the bond. So we're going to start by understanding that on the 22nd of September, Mars moves into Scorpio, out of its exile in Libra and into its home sign of Scorpio. While simultaneously, in the same day, we have our fall equinox in the northern hemisphere, where the sun moves into Libra and it moves into its fall. So Mars improves its dignity, the sun loses dignity, okay? Because we are starting the dark part of the year where Saturn becomes sort of the more powerful entity. Like Saturn was associated with darkness, it was associated with death, it was associated with endings. And when the sun is in the sign of Libra, when we're starting to see the rise of power of the dark part of the year, the sun is often associated with vitality, with life, and it's in a place that is very difficult. So what can we glean from that? First of all, we have to understand that we are building towards a Mars-Pluto square. So I'll talk about that in a second. But when a malefic planet moves into its own domicile, it doesn't necessarily mean that good things are going to happen like, because the planet is malefic. All right. So like, even when in your own chart, one of the things that I've learned from Project Hindsight, Robert Schmidt, one of the first translators of Hellenistic texts, he basically says that a malefic planet that is in its own sect, like so Mars in a night chart, Saturn in a day chart, can do good in a chart, but often at the expense of others. Okay, so let's say you have Mars in a night chart. You may benefit from someone else's loss. Say you have Saturn in a day chart. You may benefit, but from someone else's limitation, etc. And that's really interesting to me. So we see now a slightly more stable Mars, but a one that is much more powerful. So the possibility for violence is still there with Mars, the possibility for severing and separating. But there may be situations where we may benefit in our chart from someone else's loss. This may make us very aware of our grief with Mars moving into the first decan of Scorpio. It's associated with the card, the Five of Cups. And there is Decanic ruler in that card, in that decan, called the nymphi, which are objects of desire. I think the best way of thinking about Mars in Scorpio and the best use of that energy, and these are all things we're going to just talk about for an entire year in Decan Walk, but the awareness of either our addictions in the first decan of Scorpio, or the hungers that we have, what we desire that is difficult to get fulfilled. Hunger unfulfilled is a very important theme in Scorpio 1. And when Mars is moving through Scorpio, it may be easier to start severing those desires and cutting them away from us so that they don't become toxic. Think about Mars and its two domiciles, Scorpio and Aries. In Aries, Mars is severing and separating the spirit from the collective to be able to infuse an individual consciousness into a body in the transition from Aries to Taurus. When we get to the dark part of the year with Libra and Scorpio, we are severing that same consciousness from an individual body so that it can return to the collective. Does that make sense? So we're returning the body and the form to the earth. So Scorpio plays a really important function in severing a form that is no longer vital. Now, I don't know if you should tell Mars that, because what Mars likes to do in Scorpio is it will, if we accept the severing and the separating, it can facilitate it, right? So that's one way of looking at it. If we reject it, we may have Mars fighting strongly to defend the dying life force. So somebody that has Mars in Scorpio may be really good at defending in a crisis. They may hold on very tightly to old forms. That may be a difficult part of having Mars in Scorpio, is defending something that needs to be let go of and returned to the earth. So we may be feeling that quite intensely. Now, with Mars starting to square Pluto, right? So this is that will perfect on the 24th, but we'll get there in a second. I'll talk about that more in a minute. But that can bring up a lot of anger, a lot of grief, okay? Like a lot of grief that has been repressed. When Mars squares Pluto, I'll just skip ahead for now so we can talk about Mars and Scorpio. I will go back in time for a minute to show you a couple other things, but we may be experiencing this great grief, but that is also exposing some of the corruption with those that are placed into exile. So this is what we have with Mars and Pluto here. We have Mars in a place where we feel our grief very intensely, where we maybe identifying some things that we hunger for that are left unfulfilled. And then we have that come in contact with Pluto that's exposing corruption to those that we other, to those that we cast into exile. A lot of the challenges around this past week have been people trying to figure out how to decry the violence that has been perpetuated against a public figure, while also not condoning their message, which was one that sought to other people that were already othered in society and to make them even more othered, like, if that makes sense. And it is very difficult sometimes to reconcile the corruption that comes up when we have people that are already maybe on the fringe of society that are having the challenges with integrating into that society. And then there is forces that are trying to take away their rights, their human rights, etc., to make them less, to paint them as less than human. And it is, that can really bubble into some really nasty energy. And Mars Pluto could shine a big spotlight on some of the really strong negative feelings that we may come up and arise in us due to some of the corruption in how we other people in society. And well, I'm starting to see how some of this is unfolding when I was looking at this in the astrology of September, the air trines talked a lot about, I was talking about potentially feeling a sense of injustice and wanting to protest or wanting to take to the streets and right an injustice, feeling that righteous indignation. I was also, though, warning people about Mars and Pluto coming directly after those grand air trines, where it's important not to take the bait, because it is a time period that is more ripe for violence to get out of control. This is something where when we perpetuate the cycle of violence, it keeps on cycling and spiraling, and this is one of the periods where it can spiral out of control. So I think it's important to feel our honest feelings about what we're experiencing with all sorts of injustices out there in the world that are happening. And I think that it's also important, though, to figure out, how do we still maintain our centers? How do we break the reciprocal cycle of violence rather than keep perpetuating it? It's not an easy thing to do. I don't have all the answers to it, but one of the things I've been advising with this period in particular is try not to take the bait. There are people that like to bait people into a trap of violence. And this is a period of time where it would be very, very easy to fall into that trap. So that's sort of my kind of public service announcement with that. And I know, again, this is one of the things that I'm starting to come to terms with as an adult, witnessing the cycles of history. Sometimes the negative things that we experience in life are unavoidable. Like human nature really hasn't changed that much over many thousands of years. The form has changed. I would like to think that we are moving towards treating each other with more respect and kindness, but sometimes it just feels like we're just cycling through some of these challenges as we go through history. And I'm not sure what the answer is. That's something that I'll have a lot more work to do on with my own reflections. Let's see. Kate says, I should have been a ninja or a cat burglar. I love ninja as a symbol for Mars and Scorpio. Being able to do things behind the scenes, being able to be very precise with the sort of the ability to protect or to, I don't know, exert whatever violence that Mars wants to exert. So I guess I would look for covert type of actions with this as well. Yeah, let's see. Kate says it's time for a career change. Javier says, damn, the year ending in water, better cleanse all this. There are going to be some water trines coming up that I think could lead to some potentially positive emotional experiences, and we will talk about that as we move forward as well. Kate says, same with all the public responses to CEO-related news. Totally. Sometimes I feel very hopeful for humanity. Other times I feel like we are doomed. Well, I think that's both, isn't it? I think that there is hope, and then there also is doom. Like, eventually we're all going to perish. But we have to make the best of the times that we're here. Like, that's the paradox that we are trying to live through. Kate says a loss of collective compassion occurs behind the sense of injustice inside and society at large. Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that, Kate. I've been skirting around the current events of the past week because it's I don't even know how to verbalize all of it. There's just a lot of pain going around with everybody that is experiencing feelings of unfairness. There's people that were hurt by the person that perished, that have righteous anger and indignation around that person and what he said. And then there's also people that have, righteous indignation about gun violence in all its forms, whether it's towards a famous individual or towards innocents in a schoolyard. or whether it's towards innocence in a country across the ocean. It's, elevating one of those situations over the other is, I mean, that's just kind of, I guess, just it's based on whatever point of view or lens you're looking at the world through. I don't know if the divine is making those distinctions, but that's a much deeper philosophical conversation. Javier says, yeah, feels. I see such beauty, then ouch, something so yucky. That's part of being a human being, part of being a human being, Javier. Kate says, just moderate your feelings when consuming any messages that elicit a deep feeling and try not to judge humanity itself based on the comment section of one app. I agree with that. Unfortunately, the one app that I use to get some of my sporting news is also one that is really difficult to be on during times like this. It's just a minefield of grossness. So it's yeah, I see some of it, and you have to try to figure out how to work through it without losing that sense of hope, that elpis in the goodness of humanity, right? Javier says, I think a part of the fight is not letting all the yucky parts change all that inner beauty. Yeah. And I think it's some of the true spiritual masters that I've observed, at some point they understand that this is all part of the human experience or the experiences of life. Some of the actions are just, they just are, and we as humans ascribe positive and negative to it through our own whatever moral compass we ascribe to. I've been reading about oh man, there was a mythological story that was talking a lot about, I'm trying to remember. Oh, it was through Lord of the Rings. It was through Lord of the Rings. They were talking about Iluvatar, and Iluvatar being the one god in Tolkien's universe. And Iluvatar had like demigods that were creators, and one of those creators was named Melkor, who eventually became Morgoth. And he was creating not through light like some of the other demigods. He was creating through shadow. He was creating through the facing away of the light. And that eventually became the corruption that people were experiencing. But at the end of the day, Iluvatar, or Eru, took responsibility for all of it. And I think that that's kind of that was really enlightening when we were talking about that. And a lot of this is talked about in the Silmarillion, and we're kind of looking and talking about this in our Lord of the Rings group. It really has been a spiritual experience because Tolkien was a spiritual guy, and he had his own, way of looking at things. But I don't necessarily always feel like his personal spirituality was foisted upon anyone within the writings. But he definitely had a way of looking at the world that helped you ask some of these questions and project your own belief system upon it. But I thought it was really fascinating to see that Iluvatar, the one god, was responsible for all of it, the yucky parts and the beautiful parts. And I think that there are similar stories within some of the great religious traditions and spiritual traditions of the world. Javier says, I refuse for all the hate to taint my trust and my inner love for others. And that's a powerful practice, Javier, is to be able to experience all of that and let it flow through you without letting it consume you, right? That's a powerful, powerful spiritual practice. Javier says, I've been watching Alien Earth. Correlates well with astrology at the moment. Oh, I'll have to check that out. Okay, Wow says, one of my most favorite quotes is, true happiness is sustainable delight in the beautiful moments of ordinary life. Ooh, I like that. And, that's something that is a good Virgo lesson, is how do we appreciate the mundane? How do we appreciate, this is something there's this guy on Instagram that I like. His name's Uncle Pappy, and he's from Florida, but he just seems like the most zen, almost like Buddhist guy out there. He always makes these videos of him just sitting in a pond talking, waxing poetic about the beautiful things in life, and some of the challenging things. And he talks about, man, when you're doing the dishes, sometimes we have to just think about how much of a blessing it is to just to be able to do those dishes and take joy in those mundane everyday things, right? That you have this body that can experience this. And I tend to agree with that. Sometimes we have to find joy in those small mundane moments rather than just always waiting for the big, huge, inspirational thing. We have to appreciate those tiny moments. Absolutely. Javier, balance. Yes. K-Wow says it keeps the yucky from bringing you down. I agree. We have to, if we get so focused on the negative, then we're off balance, right? If we focus only on the positive and we don't acknowledge the dark and the challenging things that happen in this world, then we're not balanced either, right? Okay. Ani says, the dish metaphor sounds like practicing the presence of God, right? Seeing that the divine, if you truly believe that the divine is infused into everything, washing the dishes is a divine exercise, right? It's connecting with God, right? Even though it might not feel like it in the moment, but yes. Okay, so let's go back a couple days, and we'll talk just a little about the first aspect. When the moon escapes from the bond, when we look at the first aspect of an eclipse, a new moon, a full moon, etc., it can give us some insight into what types of experiences we might be having, because the moon is a manifester. And when the moon escapes the bond, it's like there were manifestations that were held in check, and now they can start manifesting once they are outside of the grip of the solar king, so to speak. When a planet is making an aspect to a benefic planet, generally it tends to work out a little bit better. But we have to understand what the aspect is. In this case, the aspect is a square to Jupiter. So a challenging aspect where there might be some friction, but it is making contact with a benefic planet. So when we have the, actually, it's not going to be technically at 15 degrees. So that is when it escapes from the bond, but technically it's going to be at about 22 degrees of Libra here. So let's actually move this forward a little bit, because maybe about 21. I'm going to move this forward. So there is when the actual aspect will perfect at about 21 degrees of Libra. And this is a decan of Libra that talks about nemesis, the restoring right proportion, increasing that which is lacking and decreasing that which is excessive. So because of its contact with Jupiter, we may become aware with the third decan of Cancer, Jupiter in the third decan of Cancer, of places where we have great abundance, where our cup is overflowing, like we've been talking about. And we may also have an awareness of where we have lack, where someone else might experience lack due to our abundance or our privilege or wherever we're experiencing. And this might be an opportunity to start restoring justice and right proportion, to be able to start to take that overflow and maybe do something generous with it, to do something philanthropic with it. It could be, I think that this is a really philanthropic eclipse on some level, where we might have the opportunity to share either our wisdom or our resources with one another to maybe alleviate some of that suffering that someone else might be experiencing. Oh, Javier says these connections to Libra is that how it flows to the next eclipse cycle? That's an interesting thought. I have to think about that. Our next eclipse cycle, I believe, we're going to start having eclipses in Aquarius and Leo when the nodes start moving. I feel like we've got a couple more eclipses coming over this nodal axis, but maybe I'll have to think about that a little bit more. So as we move forward with this unfolding, the sun is going to make its opposition to Neptune once it moves into Libra. So again, more spotlight. the sun in Libra 1 on how things are imbalanced, how things are unfair, injustices, the beginning of the conversation to bring things back into equilibrium. But we may be blinded by illusion of Neptune in Aries, like where Neptune in Aries is saying, well, the solution to this is what Neptune, if Neptune in Aries was embodied, it would be say, well, the solution to finding salvation is severing from the collective and becoming a strong individual. And what the sun in Libra is saying, let's shine a great spotlight on how things are on someone else's perspective, not on the individual perspective. So when we have the combination of these two things, it may be a little bit of a tension between trying to understand the other and wanting to assert and find salvation and transcendence through our own individual perspectives. And as I'm saying this, I've got a buddy here who wants to sit on my lap. Sorry, this is kitty o'clock here. Gandalf wants to make an appearance. Hello, Gandalf. Hello, buddy. He says I've been training him to sit in his in a little box next to me, which I call his chair. And now he's decided that he wants to sit right on my lap instead of on his chair, which is fine. I like having a kitty with me. Maybe the kitty is he's sweet. He's a sweet boy. What a gift. What a gift it is. Let's see. Ani says, not the next eclipse, but the one prior that it's bridged from. Yes, you can make connections with eclipses when they're in similar signs, like a new moon, like this new moon eclipse in Virgo will have connections to a full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo eventually. And yes, when we have a new moon, I think we had a new moon solar eclipse in Aries at one point, and then we had a full moon lunar eclipse in Libra, and they're definitely calling back to one another. Ani says, we already had the node in Aries and Libra, and they move retrograde. Yep. Good call there. Javier says, I see. I suppose the concept of balance comes up again, flowing to the next. Bridging the gap is a good visual. Yes. Yes. Kitty made an appearance. Okay. So that's our sun opposite Neptune. Now, over the course of those next couple days, the sun is going to make a grand air trine that Mercury just went through, with a trine to Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius. So a callback to some of the themes that we're going to experience earlier in the month with the Mercury grand air trine. So we probably will be having debates and conversations about what is fair and what isn't, and how do we get justice and all of these things with the Mercury grand air trine. And then the sun making that grand air trine is probably talking more about potential action or things of that nature, shining an awareness and a clarity on that debate that we had earlier in the month. So see those two things as connected. Now, that also may be the decree of some leadership wanting to have retribution. I say this because the current administration in America is sanctifying the person that was whose life was lost this past week, and sort of elevating them on a pedestal, while the other people who lost their lives this week are not really even being mentioned at all. So I think it is interesting that we're probably going to have conversations in the collective about what is fair, what isn't, and there may be a leader moving into a fallen position who is trying to do what they view as justice, but is delusional with the opposition with Neptune, if I'm just going to be clear about it. And that is what is leading to the Mars-Pluto square. Okay, that's the lead up to it. I have a feeling that whenever there is tragedies that happen, and especially when they're connected with a certain political ideology, bad actors will seize upon that to manipulate people's psyches to their own point of view. So the real danger in the next few weeks is people that want to perpetuate hatefulness, want to perpetuate authoritarianism and control, will seize onto certain actions in the collective to be able to assert their authoritarian, idealism. And this could be part of what we're taking a look at here. And we've seen this over the last few weeks also, where the current administration has started to fabricate or exaggerate the levels of violence in certain cities so that they can send in military to take control of those cities. And it could just potentially be accelerated around this period of time. And with Mars squaring Pluto, I just think that this is people aren't going to be happy about those kind of things. They're not happy about it. They're fucking pissed about those types of things. I guess I would just kind of reiterate that it's a trap. Like, the more we respond and perpetuate that cycle of violence, the more the grip is going to tighten from the people that actually have that power and control. Do I know the answer about it yet? Does it mean that we do nothing? No, it doesn't. There are so many different ways to fight back on authoritarian control rather than falling right into the trap of a violent response that sort of gives them the justification for being even more heinous themselves, if that makes sense. So that's part of the kind of unfolding of this eclipse. That'll bring us to a first quarter moon on the 29th, where the sun in Libra is going to be squaring the Capricorn moon. Both of the lights, the sun and the moon, are going to be in an ill-dignified position. The sun in its fall, the moon in its exile. Could be having us asking a lot of questions about the laws of the land. That's what we see with the first decan of Capricorn, is like, what is the pros and cons of a specific place? And because it's squaring the Libra sun, there could be new laws of the land that we're trying to reconcile with that could be very challenging. And that's going to bring us to the full moon in Libra 2 at 14 degrees of Aries on the 6th of October, which incidentally is the first day of our Decan walk. So we'll be starting our Decan walk with a full moon. Nope, not in Libra. Sorry, it's not bad. Talk about the Aquarius. I'm sorry. Geez. Talk about your Pisces North Node details versus surrendering to the process. It's going to be a full moon in Aries 2 at 14 degrees of Aries on October the 6th. Yeah, we just had a little bit of some fudging with some details here. But we fixed it, right? And so we're going to have this full moon happening at the beginning of Decan Walk on the 6th of October. So I hope you'll join me for that. But we will talk more about the full moon in Aries, not only in Decan Walk, but on the channel as well. All right. So that gets us to the end of our sort of astrological exploration. I'm just going to look through the chat here before we talk about the I-Ching and the animal of the day. Let's see. Let's see. Kate says, I think the coming water trines will be ripples related to Mars and Cancer cycle, at least in the personal cycles. What do I think? All the connections with Saturn and Pisces and that Mars made then. I think it's interesting when planets go over the similar degrees with a different planet. So all of the Mars degrees that we had with the retrograde are now going to get Jupitered, basically. So maybe there will be some healing to some of that, hopefully. Maybe there will be the restoring of some order that was split apart, potentially. Remember, Jupiter is a planet that likes to restore order. It's also a liberator, so there could be liberation associated with that, with Jupiter transiting those similar degrees. Let's see. Javier says, can't Saturn buy me a lollipop without the lesson? I wish. That would be nice. Kate says, when Spencer referred to a cup of blood, I think my ears perked up. Yeah, that's the name of the third decan of Pisces, where we might have we're reckoning with sacrifice, martyrdom versus saviorhood, and we have to figure out how to navigate the extremes of emotions potentially. Ani says, Saturn in Pisces is my time lord. I'm so triggered. Sorry, mess like leaking HVAC. Oh, I didn't mean to trigger you, Ani, but sometimes it's okay to just let the tears flow and let the emotions come out. I mean, that can be cathartic. Kate says, I'm certified in phlebotomy during that cycle, and I'm still unemployed. What is phlebotomy? What is that? I don't know if I've heard that term before. Javier says, so well put, Spencer. Mars square Pluto. Oh, thanks, Javier. I don't have all the answers, and I'm angry about things. I'm hoping for peace with certain things. I really do like that Hydra metaphor for all this, though, is if you try to cut off one of the heads using, the sword, you're just going to sprout 9 in its place. So the more rhetoric and violence that we put out there and perpetuate, the more it's going to spawn that from someone who doesn't agree with us. So I think that cauterizing it through solar light, through awareness, and sealing that off is a much better way. So it's through awareness, and I think through trying to imagine and embody what we wish for the world, not try to continue to just, I don't know, instigate, I guess would be the word. Kate says, I think of being submerged in the bathtub, listening to the echoes and feelings of the sound. You're kind of forced to learn and observe differently. Yeah, like one of those immersion chambers, right? Those sensory deprivation chambers, right? Where all you kind of your other senses start to get more acute, like through osmosis, Kate says. Yeah. Kate says, Mars and Libra, kill him with kindness. There you go. I like it. Javier says, yes, I've been having sleepy dreams. For example, a bedroom filling up with water, but yet it never drowns me. Truly tranquil. That's cool. I like that. Okay. Ani says, I'm totally kidding about the drama. Sorry for lost on text. Yeah, no worries. Sometimes it's hard to get a flow with the chat too, because there's a little bit of delay. So sometimes I'm seeing things and it's not. I would find it funny if it was in the context, but sometimes I miss the joke because it's out of context, and that's not your fault. Jolie James is here. Says, I caught the tail end. Glad to see you all. Phlebotomy, blood drawing. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Jolie. Appreciate that. So that's very Mars and Scorpio there, Kate, right? Or Scorpionic. So maybe that's a good field for you. Javier says, I want to watch the kids movie Elemental. Oh, I don't know if I've seen that one. All right, friends, let's start wrapping for the day. What we're going to do is we're going to bring up the hexagram that'll help us get through this. So here is the hexagram for the day. Oops. Sorry. I got the 56, the Wanderer, and it is changing to hexagram number 33, Retreat. So the Wanderer is one where we are traveling in a situation in a foreign land. So with the new moon solar eclipse in Virgo, we are going to be maybe heading into territory that we're not super familiar with. We're in transition to a new chapter in our life. And when we're in transition, sometimes that makes us vulnerable. I'm going to read a little bit from Jack Balkin's The Laws of Change. It says, you are in a period of transition. Things are not yet certain, and it is not yet clear how you fit into them or what your identity is supposed to be. The text compares your situation to that of a wanderer who is traveling through a strange land. The wanderer is a sojourner. He does not expect to stay long, but he is not quite sure where he is going next. He knows very few people. He is not exactly sure what the local customs are or whom he can trust. He does not completely understand what is expected of him. Because his situation is uncertain, he is circumspect and cautious. He does not call attention to himself, nor does he get involved in matters that do not concern him. He associates only with reliable and trustworthy people and does not get involved in anything underhanded or unscrupulous. Interesting. Much less anything that would get him into trouble with local authorities. Instead, he tries to learn as much as he can from his new surroundings, and in this way, he learns something about himself. Apply these principles to your own life. You are on a journey whose destination is not yet determined. This is not the time to make definite commitments. Instead, this is the time to explore. You need to gather new information, gain new perspectives, experiment with new ways of living, and meet new people. Don't be afraid to try something different. You won't know what the right path is until you try a number of different possibilities. Be flexible and adaptable and willing to learn. So we're in a situation that's new that we might need to be a little bit cautious around with this. Now, the changing line says, this line tells of a story of a wanderer who introduces himself in a new land through a feat of great skill, which gains him an introduction to the prince and eventually high office. If you know how to use your abilities to your best advantage, you can find a satisfactory place in any new situation. Act with generosity and magnanimity. Demonstrate through your words and actions that you are comfortable with yourself and know your own worth without being arrogant or immodest. Then people will accept you and introduce you into their circles. You will have great success in your new environment. Really fascinating. So this is kind of telling us that, hey, if we want to fit into the new situation of our life, we don't necessarily need to boast about it. We can just, be ourselves. We can, demonstrate our skills without necessarily having to foist them on other people, and it'll all work out. I mean, it's great. This is a great hexagram for coming to the Deck and Walk open house, where we can just kind of show you what class is like. We don't have to necessarily demonstrate things in a way that's arrogant or haughty. We're just kind of going through it like we do here each week. This is changing to the hexagram Retreat 33, strategic withdraw, live to fight another day. This says you face hostile conditions and therefore should make a strategic retreat. This is entirely appropriate under the circumstances and should not be confused with cowardice or resignation. You should withdraw when you are in the strongest position to do so, preserving your resources in order to fight another day. An army that retreats only after it is defeated in battle has waited too long. As a result, it often suffers heavy casualties as it flees and must leave its arms and provisions on the field. In this case, by timing your withdrawal appropriately, you avoid losses and conserve your power. In this way, you can actually strengthen yourself and begin preparations for effective countermeasures. Indeed, by retreating in the right way, you can actually make things more difficult for your opponent by limiting his options and means of attack. You can retreat to a position of strength with full power and resources still at your disposal. By making yourself less vulnerable to your adversary, you make your adversary less powerful and less able to harm you. I think this one is perfect for what we were describing with the Mars-Pluto square that was coming up, and the potential for a trap to be laid by oligarchical power and authoritarian power. When we retreat and we preserve our strength to be able to fight another day, especially if we are not necessarily in a position that would guarantee success, that allows us to be able to become centered, to be able to strategize. Retreat is not giving up. Retreat is strategizing so that when you have the opportune moment to be able to be victorious, you can take the proper actions in that time. A Mars-Pluto square with Mars in Scorpio and Pluto in Aquarius is not the opportune moment to push back on power that would love nothing more than to escalate violence, if that makes sense. I think it's a perfect I-Ching for this moment. Let's see. We've got some nice comments coming in on this. Let's see. Venipuncture. Okay, so let's see. Everybody surrounded by botanical gardens and trees. There we go. Sojourner. I'm adding that to my lexicon. I love it. This is a very curious mercurial reading, Ani says. Yeah, well, we're in a Mercury ruled eclipse, so that it's appropriate. Javier says the bigger man walks away a winner to keep his inner peace. I agree. Ani says get out while you can, so you can shoot another day. K2 Kazemi is strong today through the oracle. You know, I didn't, I was skirting around this reading a little bit, but since you put that out there, here is what the actual judgment of this changing line says. Because I thought it's kind of ironic, especially with your comment here. It says, let's see, where is it? Changing line says, he shoots a pheasant. He kills it with one arrow. In the end, this brings him praise and office. So this talks about shooting a pheasant and presenting it as a gift, which demonstrates both accomplishment and skill. So it's interesting that that's what came up in the I-Ching. And I was on the fence about sharing that particular judgment due to some of the circumstances over the past week and it being a little bit too on the nose. But it's the I-Ching, it's an oracle, you know, it's not necessarily anything that we always have control over, and it speaks in riddles and in codes sometimes. So let's see, here is our animal for this eclipse. It's the ladybug. Look at that beautiful little ladybug. I think the ladybug is interesting. I'm going to read you a little bit from Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez. And this is an animal that symbolizes luck, fortune, happiness, and protection. Whenever we see ladybugs, they're just so magical. Sometimes it's like a wish embodied. Ladybug means to live life to the fullest every single day. Ladybugs lay both fertile and infertile eggs so that ones that hatch will have the infertile ones to eat. This means that you shouldn't be wasteful. Ladybugs gather in the thousands to share body warmth when it's time to hibernate. Warmth is also why they'll come into people's homes in the winter. This means that you should reconnect with friends that you haven't seen for a while, like in the Decanic open house. Be social and make sure that you stay warm when it's cold outside. So this is a little symbol that symbolizes abundance, faith, a dream coming true. When Ladybug appears, it means you're about to have a fortunate change in your life. Ladybug reminds you that you're protected from the negativity of the world, shielded by your own positive defensive shell. Ladybug warns not to stay hidden in that shell, but to come out to ascend to new heights. It's easy for Ladybug to stay inside where it's safe, but to open its wings, allowing itself to be vulnerable, is when the greatest accomplishments are made. Ladybug reminds you that sometimes you have to expose your inner self in order to fly. Ladybug is connected to spirituality and the development of your internal core essence. Your spiritual values are strong, so you need to take time each day for meditation, even if it's 5 minutes, to reconnect to your spirituality. This symbol helps you when you're deliberating over a choice. Ladybug helps you to see the direction to take. If you want to bring more abundance into your life, ask Ladybug for assistance. It can help you on your path to enlightenment. It can push away any illusions. Remember, we have an opposition with the Sun and Neptune here that you may have, and show you the truth of spirit. It can help you to let go of fears and anxiety and replace those negative qualities with a trusting calmness and faith that everything will work out as it should. Ladybug is a symbol of innocence and love. If you've become frustrated and disappointed with your life or the world, Ladybug can help you to find the purity in it again so you return to love. Ladybug warns against trying to force your will. The universe works in its own time, which is often out of alignment with the speed in which we'd like things to happen. It reminds you to stop pushing so hard and let things happen as they are meant to be. I love that. I mean, that's really the essence of the Tao right there, is to let go of the oars, stop forcing ourselves into whatever situation, and allow life to wash over us and to go with the currents and the flows of our life. That doesn't mean that we are eternally passive and that we don't take action, but we take action when it is the right time to take action, when we are guided to the actions that we need to take, rather than trying to force them or accelerate them when they're not time or ready yet. So beautiful symbol for this eclipse. All right, let me go through this chat here. Let's see what we've got. We've got a few more things coming, and then we'll just wrap up for the day. What do you say? Let's see. I got to go back in time here. We had such awesome comments here. You guys are bringing me all sorts of good stuff to think about. So here is our, where did it go? Oh, thank you for the super chat, K-Well. Appreciate you, friend. Appreciate you. I'm just looking through the chat. I want to get these beautiful comments on here. Here we go. Beautiful. Perfect indeed. Calculated versus reactive. Nice. They're so sweet, like dragonflies. I'm not sure. An insect community. They actually eat aphids. So they're great for the garden. Ladybugs are amazing for the garden because they get rid of a pest that can be much more destructive. So they are part of that beautiful cycle. Yeah, keep your eyes peeled for them in the garden nook. Javier says, I've had so many animal spirit guides last week. Nice. Say goodbye before I hear GTFO. Javier says, a skunk almost walked in the house. Oh, my goodness. Jolie says, I call my daughter Ladybug. So do I, me too. I call my daughter Doodlebug, but it's somewhat similar. I love it. Kate says, I've been working through my own emotional regulation and observing my thoughts. I'm trying to repair low self-esteem. I like this reading for my personal efforts. I like it for you too, Kate. Hope that you'll come and join us tomorrow. Ani says, omit here. I like to throw an extra word if I see anyone is paying attention. Okay, I don't know that one. Dimfy says, Wu Wei. Absolutely. Coming into alignment with the Tao and the flow. Absolutely. K-Wow, thanks again for that super chat, friend. Appreciate you. Yeah. Wu Wei is a good for water. Absolutely. Javier says, ladybugs always seem so balanced to me. I agree. They're wonderful little creatures. All right, my friends. Before you go, just if you came in late, we got a free open house tomorrow for our Deck and Walk 2025. And registration is open. If you want to just sign up, let me know. The link is live on my website to sign up. But if you want to get more information, you want to kind of hang out, we're going to be going live via Zoom. You'll get a Zoom link for tomorrow, the 13th of September at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be just giving you a preview of what class is like. We're going to be talking about the decans. We'll do a little bit of chart reading. We'll talk about the decans of the time. And if you sign up for it, you get a free code for a decan webinar of your choice, a $45 value. It is my gift to you just for coming and attending, and hopefully it will serve you well. So that's what I've got for you today. Have a great, great eclipse. Hopefully I'll see some of you this weekend. Go follow me over at Spencer Michaud on the various social media platforms and visit me at spencermichaud.com. So take care, friends. Hope to see you tomorrow. And remember, super remember, try to stay centered through all this. I know it's a lot. There's so many things to be angry about and to be upset about from so many different perspectives. But how do we put into the world what we want to see? You know, if you put love into the world, love's going to come back to you. If you put hate and rhetoric out into the world, that's going to come back to you. And I think that it's important to kind of facilitate the love in the world. And you do that through kindness, and you start by being kind to yourself, and then you take that kindness and you share and uplift someone else in your world. It's a beautiful reciprocal thing. So let's try to practice that. And I will see you the next time, friends. Be kind to yourself, be kind to one another, and we'll see you the next time. Peace.